So, of course, many of you have heard that Donald Trump made the claim that the Civil Rights Act was very bad for white Americans, that it treated them unfairly. And that's a fairly common refrain. If you look at what happened during the Civil Rights Act, there were people who were once Republicans who became Democrat. I think Ronald Reagan was one of them, famously, who became a Democrat because they thought that the Civil Rights Act went too far. Before the Civil Rights Act, we had the Dred Scott decision. We had separate but equal. We had legal segregation, where separate but equal was interesting because you had a whole lot of separate but not a lot of equal. But the dividing line for a lot of people who once believed and called themselves Democrats, like the Strom Thurmonds, they called themselves Democrats. But when civil rights became the issue, they switched. They went from almost the entire regions of the country went from Republican to Democrat. They called them Dixiecrat. There was a mass exodus from one party to the other. And it was the Civil Rights Act that many of them point to as the line in the sand. It was the red line they couldn't recover from. And the civil rights was interesting because before that we had the Dred Scott decision, which held that no black man had rights that a white man was bound to respect. We had, legal segregation, like I said, separate but equal. There used to be a time when they wouldn't even sell black people vanilla ice cream because they thought it was too pure. So that's why if you have a certain age, you remember black people only like black walnut butter pecan because they couldn't have vanilla ice cream. So you take men who grew up being able to tell black people to not look at them, to not speak, to not do anything, to being asked to treat them civilly. And they didn't call it, they called it civil rights. It wasn't equal rights, it wasn't superior rights, it was civil rights. Civility is the lowest modicum of human interaction. If you don't like somebody, you can't send somebody, you say, let's be civil. We can at least be civil. Civility was the thing. And civility is the bare modicum of human interaction. So all of a sudden, you took these people who were able to tell black people where they could live, if they could vote, who they could marry, what jobs they could have, what schools they could go to, and you asked them to be civil. This is what happened. That was a line that many of them wouldn't cross. That was a line that was too far. You go from being able to dominate and tell somebody what to do to just having to be civil to them. Just having to be, not having them be superior, not having them even be equal, but just to be civil to them. America had water hoses and lynchings and murders and arguments at restaurants and general upheaval. And that is what happened when you ask white people in America to not give people equality, to not give people superiority, but to just be civil. That is what happened in America when you ask white folk to just be nice.